the Timbinbilla space station. It was built in the 1960s. I'd come out here as a kid and I couldn't help and get the feel and the feeling of the moon landing and the space race and why all that was happening in the 1960s. Funnily enough, the piece of hi-fi equipment I have today was actually made in the 1960s and they have re-released it. And it still has that 1960s classic look to it, with the insides and the internals all being upgraded. So I'm looking forward to giving you my thoughts on this piece of equipment. And this, well, this is pretty cool. And I said it was built in the 1960s. It was actually used to track Voyager 1 and 2. And I'm not sure if it still gets used today, but either way, that's pretty cool. But let's go have a look at the McIntosh C22. With the space race happening, there's something about the 1960s. Whether it's the fashion or the design, and the design of hi-fi. The 1960s just had a look and a feel about it, and I love it. And the McIntosh vacuum tube preamplifier is no exception. It was released in the mid-1960s, and McIntosh brought it back in 1995. And in 2022, they have released the McIntosh C22 again, and it still has that beautiful vintage 60s look about it, and I love it. And it's just a classic 60s hi-fi look. Before we begin, I just wanted to say the following. My room acoustics and equipment will be different to yours, so the sound may differ, and sound is a personal and subjective experience. That out of the way, let us begin. Turning on the amp, it will go through a warm-up mode with the lights flashing red and the tubes glowing orange. Once ready, the flashing red lights will stop and the tubes will glow green. Now, I love the way it turns on. I'm going to turn it on. And you saw this before. The lights flash. It's pretty cool. Letting you know we're warming up. Okay, so it's on. One thing that I had to get used to a little bit was this. When you turn the volume up, most amps have, they've got the digital display and it lets you know you're at -30 or -22, whatever, however your amp works. So I know on my McIntosh, I go around about 18, between 18, 25, each album is recorded. The master volume might be a little bit different. So but when I got this, see here, the red lights. I was getting used to why I had this. Where's Concord's listening point where I'm happy with it? The 4th or 5th red light was my happy place, my happy listening place. Now, the C22, in regards to inputs, it includes 2 balanced inputs and 3 unbalanced inputs. In regards to outputs, 2 unbalanced and 2 balanced. And it also has an inbuilt phono preamp and can cater for both moving coil and moving magnet. You can select the resistance and loading via the dials in the front of the unit, and it also has dials for both bass and treble tone control. Now, I like when you turn each dial, it's a definite, it doesn't feel flimsy, it's quite taut. And I said something similar when I was looking at this old vintage Sony amp, and I like that it's like that. And the same for these switches. Like, yeah, that's awesome. And it does kind of remind me of the 60s where everything was like flick switch and dials, and which is pretty cool. It doesn't, and it's the same with the phono load as well. It's a definite switch over. The input, it's not as taut, and it just smoothly goes over. And the volume, well, it's just smooth. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to say about the C22 is it has the 6 tubes, and I got some tubes here because the hi-fi enthusiast in me wanted to do a bit of tube rolling in one of my Phono preamps. Now, it wasn't a true tube Phono preamp. It was more hybrid, if anything. It did contribute to the sound. And I found with tubes, I did love that softer sound. But it's trying to get that softer sound balanced and what you like with it. And I found, and I still love a softer sound, but I don't like it too soft where it's not giving me any kind of depth or dynamic range. I apologize if you're hearing some background. It is really windy outside. My gate's going nuts. And with the tubes that are in the C22, all of them play a role. You've got this schematic on top, and it actually gives you the signal pathways of what each tube is doing and its role that it plays when you select an input, which is pretty cool that they actually put that in there. I think that's awesome. And they did that with the McIntosh C2800. This amplifier, what I like about it, it's not too soft with its tubes. And I like that. I like that it still has some dynamic punch in there, which is just really nice, because I think sometimes if you tonally tone it down too much, it just doesn't have that impact. The tubes in this and the way they have the flavor of it, the tonal range, it's nice. It really is. And what I mean by that, it doesn't sound too soft where it's playing it safe. It still has some dynamic range there and a bit of punch. It does have a fullness to it, which I really like. And if you want to take that next step where you want to push that sound, well, then I'd say go the McIntosh C2800, because that wasn't holding back, and I was quite surprised. And I'll still stand on what I said. I thought acoustically it took more of a front seat. And if you want to hear your band or your music or that acoustic music playing, well, then that might be the amp for you. If you want something a little bit more balanced, a classic sound, a bit more, motion of the ocean, but still has that dynamic range there and is, balanced well, then this would be the one for you. So this is, if you're a music lover, this is a really nice piece of kit. In an ideal hi-fi world, I would love to have this as my second preamp, because there's some albums that I really liked listening to on this. And that album, loved listening to this album on the C22. It was just awesome. Now, One thing I wanted to mention, I showed you the connections at the back. I was a bit worried at the start, thinking, oh, it doesn't have a sub out. Okay, how's this going to go? After actually using it, didn't have to worry about the sub at all. I found I did not need a subwoofer. The preamp has enough bass in there to provide me enough bass with not needing a separate LFE channel. Now, I'm running the C22 8 Generation 2 speakers. If anything, on my C22s, I've actually could have reduced it by one. Just one turn, and I reckon it would have just rolled off a bit nicer. I like bass, but I don't like it heavy where it's starting to overtake too much from the acoustics. You know, it's a kind of a balancing act, but also I understand it's your personal choice. I know some people really like a deep bass more, and they like it to kind of be sitting, taking more of a front seat over the acoustics. That's totally fine. If that's your preference, totally fine. But where I'm going with this is, even though it didn't have a sub out, the bass still provided. So the McIntosh C22 does come with a headphone jack, and it does come with HXD technology. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not much of a headphone person. The amount of headphone listening I do is via my iPhone, listening to either an audiobook or history or some music now and then. Even the music I listen to, sometimes it's compressed, sometimes it's uncompressed. So when I got a chance to listen to the music via the C22, well, it was quite a noticeable difference, and I don't think I've heard my headphones sound this good before. So if you are a headphone person, well, don't hesitate to take some headphones with you and plug it in and have a listen for yourself. Now, when it comes to the C22 onboard Phono preamp, it's good to see it's catering for both MM and MC cartridges. Now, in terms of the sound, well, it's much what you're getting already from the amp. So if that's kind of your sound, what you're already getting from the amp, well, that's what you can expect from the onboard Phono preamp. It has nice music presentation. It looks awesome. I love that 60s look. It looks cool. And I like what McIntosh have done. What a retro looking amplifier to today with modern capacitors and modern parts, which is pretty cool. It's a real gem. I really like it. And if you're in a hi-fi shop, stop and ask to have a listen, because it is a really nice sound.